we will go deep into the realm of the unknown and question everything as we search for the truth. We will explore the possibility of countless phenomena within the ultra spectrum, and together we will learn that it is all connected. This podcast is brought to you by the Experiencer Support Association, and it is a live stream broadcast. If you have a question, send me a super chat or become a YouTube member. This podcast is brought to you by the Experiencer Support Association. Take a seat, relax, get ready, and welcome to Beyond the Tinfoil Hat.
Sorry about that. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Beyond the Tinfoil Hat. Today is Thursday, March 24th, 2022, and I, Ryan Stacey, am your host this evening. I'm a licensed private investigator, a citizen journalist, and the Director of Investigations for the Experiencer Support Association. I am the former National Chief Investigator for MUFON Canada and the former International Field Investigator Trainer for MUFON in general. Welcome to the channel, and thank you for joining us this evening. To super chat, click the $ next to your name in the comment box. And if you're in the observation deck, we are inside the Experiencer Hall. Go in and put your comments and the questions in the chat box. Tonight's theme is meditation, consciousness, and mind-body connection. Our guest for season 4, episode 10, is Talwinder Terry Sidhu. I hope I said that right. All right, nods in the crowd there and laughters. Talwinder Terry Sidhu was introduced to meditation at a young age as he was raised in a Sikh household. Now he has taught thousands of people how to meditate, including children as young as 5 years old, and now specializes in teaching neurodivergent individuals how to meditate and navigate their intelligence through life. Through teaching meditation, Terry has helped people manage their mental health without medication and explore their inner spirituality. All his endeavors with his clients, audience members, and readers are to help them realize they can significantly improve their lives by meditating. When he isn't working with clients, he enjoys writing, hiking, meditating, especially when he has a weekend to do a tantric ritual, and discussing and debating solutions to life's biggest problems. You can grab a copy of his book, Meditate, Breathe into Meditation, and Awaken Your Potential, which is available now on Amazon and Audible. As you can find him on social media, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube at Meditate with Terry, and his website is www.meditatethebook.com. Hey Terry, put on your tinfoil hat. We're about to go down a rabbit hole. How are you doing?
I'm doing really well. How are you, Ryan?
I'm doing great. I had you muted there for a second. Right on. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to bring in the icebreaker, which is the first question of the night brought to us tonight by CC. So let's bring this in here.
Still not sure about that.
Yes. All right. So tonight's icebreaker question is, what scientific discovery would be the most impactful for humanity today?
Ooh. Scientific discovery. So something that is yet to be discovered, right?
The rules are the questions there. So what scientific discovery would be the most impactful for humanity today? It doesn't say. So you go anywhere.
All right. If science can demonstrate or replicate. If science can replicate consciousness, we will solve many, many mysteries in life today. We'll be able to understand how consciousness navigates within an entity. So, for example, creating that consciousness in an artificial body and how it operates and settles and the problems it has. It can really help us understand the inner workings of our body and mind and our intelligence. And it'll really help us study the human experience in a very external way, which is what we're not able to do right now, but we can do in meditation internally. So I think that'd be an incredible discovery.
I'll agree with you, because I don't think I could say anything smarter than that. So I'm on your side with that. Awesome. Thank you, CC. All right. So the question that I like to start the show off with is as always, why are you the way that you are? And what I mean by that, me meeting you for the first time a few minutes ago, reading your bio out for the first time, learning all these things, I'm interested in knowing how you got here.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to start from any point in your life, walk me through, and then from there, we'll see where this goes.
Okay. Well, I guess the story actually begins for me when I started meditating. So I was about 9 years old, and I grew up in a Sikh family. So meditation was like the integral component of Sikhism, and the whole purpose of meditating was to seek truth. So that was it. There was no kind of like, this is what the truth is. It just said, go ahead, go. This is how you do it. Go meditate, and you go discover the truth for yourself. And that was very intriguing for me. However, the reason why I started meditating wasn't so auspicious, I should say. It was more as a result of not feeling connected or desired or wanted or feeling that I resonated with the human experience. Everyone seemed to be getting along with life. They understood, we should eat, we should sleep, we should make friends, we should have community. And I just didn't vibe with it. And I think meditation kind of became my sanctuary, and it became a way for me to separate myself from the experience of life that I was having. It felt very kind of disconnected from the whole experience. And it seemed like everyone, like I wasn't the one playing football. I wasn't, this typical kid that I was able just to make friends so easily. I just kind of did and said whatever was on my mind, and that often got me into trouble. And then meditating, it always kind of gave me a new angle on life. Life always felt like the easiest component. To me, life wasn't the main experience. I was having all of these wonderful experiences at such a young age. And it was, the way I can describe it, it was like I had deities picking my consciousness up and moving me into different areas and intergalactic experiences. And, you can pass those off as the vivid imaginations of a child. But to me, there was so much more family within my own mind, and so much more friendship, and so much more exploration, and so much more expansive. I remember being able to just move onto the moon and just look down at my life and looking back at my body sitting in meditation and these amazing, wonderful qualities. And I could go on for hours just about them. And so to me, the life experience seemed very kind of basic. It was just the present moment. There was no future, no past here. In my mind was so much more expansive. I could go visit memory. I could go create ideas and bring them back into the present. But the present moment, life itself, the experience with the 5 physical senses was just not that enthusing. It wasn't that inspiring to me, and especially what was going on around me too. Like everyone was obsessed with money and, trying to build clout and build their lives up into these wonderful esteemed states. And I was like, why aren't we just happy, eating, sleeping, and having fun and just having a good time? So I really disconnected from life there. And as I grew up, I started learning psychology. I thought that would be the route I'd go down. I was obsessed with human behavior. I was always paying attention. I was always observing. I think it was because I was meditating, and it was almost kind of like I wanted a story from life to take into meditation and study. So I would always watch kind of how my family would interact, my aunts and my uncles, my mom, my dad, my siblings, my cousins, because we had a lot of family gatherings. And so naturally, I kind of developed into psychology. And then about 2 years into psychology, there was no mention of meditation. And that drove me a little insane, because like, how can we diagnose people with these illnesses if we're not teaching them how to assess the validity of their reality? And this is me at like 17, 18 years old. And so challenging my psych teachers, like, when are we going to start teaching meditation? When are we going to use that as a tool? And there was back then, there was only a few little bits about mindfulness and stuff. And we can go into mindfulness later. There's a whole issue I have with that whole industry. But it wasn't sufficient enough, and there was no teachings of meditation. Even in religious education, there was no mention of meditation. So I kind of rejected the whole idea of pursuing psychology. But then looking back at my subjects, and I realized marketing was the route I was going to go down, because marketing to me felt like psychology in action, whereas psychology was limited in terms of ethics and morals. They were lifted when it came to marketing.
It's interesting you say that, because you have to understand how people work and think in order to get them onto the product. So psychology is very important for marketing.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at the way Facebook has been operating for the last even 10 years, you'd start realizing like how much, not only psychology they implemented, but how much data they were able to extract in order to create these algorithms that run our lives today. And so for me, marketing made it was like a good subject to do. I was like, I can understand human behavior a lot better and how human behavior is actually shaped. Because to me, when I studied marketing, I understood how it exploits human vulnerability to reshape their desires. It was incredible. Like all my class were like, yeah, we're going to use this to climb to the top. And I was like, this is incredible knowledge to actually understand how people think and feel and where the vulnerabilities lie. And it really is really basic stuff used in a very exploitative manner. And then after doing psychology, getting a job in marketing for a few months, I didn't feel comfortable doing it. It didn't sit with my MO. And I'd stopped meditating when I was about 16 as well, just because, I grew tall. I lost all my puppy fat. My teeth were straight. My hair was nice and long. And all of a sudden, the world opened up for me. I became popular. And there was no need to kind of need my sanctuary as much anymore because the world was opening up to me. So I rode that wave up until I was about 24, 25. I'm 34 now, so we're getting closer to the end of this story.
Yeah, it's okay.
So when I got this job after university in marketing, didn't connect with me, didn't resonate with me. So I decided then to move to Canada. And there was a whole reason for that decision. It was basically a Canada or Australia, and I was deathly afraid of snakes at the time. So I was like, Canada it is. It was just a whim decision. And I came here and kind of jumped around a bit, learned a few things. And that was for Canada was the first time I actually got to explore my identity as an individual. There was no responsibility but to myself at the time. And so it was a great moment for me to explore who I was. And that then started opening other doors. And I realized actually I can connect and talk to people. I have a great way of resonating with how people think and feel and giving good advice. So I started to run.
Where were you before you moved to Canada?
I was in England. So in a little town, or is a city.
Yeah,
it's a city.
It's okay. It's still the same queen. So so it's kind of good there.
From England to Canada, and then here, everyone's so friendly and open. So it was such a safe space for me to explore who I was and trying to get into understanding who I am as a human, not as a conscious entity, which I resonated with since I was such a young age. So like getting to be human was a great opportunity for me. And then I remember, I started life coaching, and the reason why I started life coaching, because I had all this marketing knowledge, I had all this meditation knowledge, and I was like, why can't we use, if these marketing tools can turn small enterprises and small companies into huge corporations and conglomerates, then surely we can use these tools to improve our lives. So instead of doing the whole certified life coaching program, I decided to create a personal development program by converting marketing tools into personal development ones. Created a life planning tool, started the company, and away we went, and it started growing. And then I think it got to a point where I was burning out after about 8 years, but a lot of my clients kept coming to me for mental health issues. And by this point, I didn't realize people didn't meditate. I just thought everyone did it in some form or fashion.
Right.
So my clients are like, I got anxiety, I got stress, I got depression. I'm like, well, just meditate, just up your meditation. And they were like, what's that? I was like, it's meditation. What's that? And so they're having this conversation over and over again. I'm starting to realize no one knows what this meditation stuff is. No one knows what they're doing. And people were literally asking, like, is that mindfulness? And I was like, well, sort of, but not quite. And
I feel like the word mindfulness is a buzzword. So like I don't want to interrupt you, but I do want to kind of segue into why you have a problem with that. Because I don't know why I don't like that word. So I'm curious to know if you
I think you'll resonate with the reason why. So anyway, very, very quickly I started teaching meditation and started bringing my childhood lessons in, teaching what I do and how I did it. Like there was not like a service offering. I just wrote it on my website. I'll teach my clients how to meditate, and that climbed the ranks. And I remember that when I officially started teaching meditation, it was crazy. Cannabis became legalized in Canada. And I got a call, and I was kind of doing some 420 meditations with my friends, because I've read, since I was a kid, I was reading about how like hash and bunga and all this stuff elevates meditative experiences. And so I started creating this thing called 420 meditation. And I got a call from a medicinal cannabis clinic. And they said the patients who are terminally ill, they have to come in, they take their medication, they sit there, and they're struggling with the psychoactive states. Would you mind coming in and teaching a class? And I taught a class, and it was the most incredible kind of experience for me that I've, in terms of teaching and facilitating anything that I've ever had. Because what happened was we taught the meditation, and we had the most enlightening discussion about life, death, and creation. Conversations that some of these 70, 80, and even 90-year-olds never had the capacity to have in their entire lives. You know, the component, that aha moment, that sense of fulfillment that came from life only started coming when they were able to openly discuss these things that we were discussing. And we were very detached from it. It wasn't about my life or their life. It was just about life in general. Right. And then talking about space and stars and intergalactic travel and deities and gods, and opening the door for philosophy after inner exploration and bringing it out into discussion. It was phenomenal. And so I jumped on the 420 bandwagon for a while, did some events, and then I decided, you know what, I want to teach this full time. I want to teach teachers how to meditate. I want to create programs for kids. And where I am now is where I'm creating programs for neurodivergent folk. And so I moved to this small town in the interior in BC. And I opened up a meditation studio. And this was now probably 6-7 months before COVID. And it was going great. I was teaching in schools within the first month of opening. We had full classrooms. We was doing really well. And then COVID hit, and we had to close the doors in the first year of business. So I had 6 months left on my lease at the time. I remember I only did a year. And in those 6 months, I decided, well, I came here to teach meditation. I can't have students in my space, so I'll write a book. And that's when I started writing Meditate, because I realized there's just everything that I'm teaching. The one comment I kept getting back was, where's this knowledge gone? Why do we not know this? How are we not taught this in schools? So I was like, well, I'll write a book. And the original book is probably like 3-4 times as big. But one thing I was very conscious of, I didn't want to give my ideas or my notions of what creation is or it isn't. Like, I can talk about them and in conversation and such, but I want to teach people how to meditate and get to these discoveries themselves. Right. You know, it's the whole idea, you know, you give a man a fish, you could teach a man how to fish type of scenario. And so I condensed it down to the core foundation formulas of how to meditate and the how-tos, like a textbook. And the result of that was Meditate. And then from there, I went back to England, like just a lot of personal stuff with my dad's health and whatnot. And then started creating content, started doing online courses, started digitizing things, because COVID was around for a while. It still is around, but the way England's going, it doesn't seem so anymore. But here we are today, where now I've got this TikTok following and a massive, you know, online customer base who just want to meditate, and I'm just serving as and what they need. Right now, I'm really focused on creating programs for neurodivergent folk. And helping them integrate intelligence. But it's like just even saying it out loud, is like, damn, there's a lot of work that's gone into it, but I'm happy to be here.
Well, that's the thing, is you started, and that's a fascinating story. Like, you're on a journey and you didn't give up. A lot of things, a lot of changes, a lot of moves, but what I'm hearing is that everywhere you went, you were still connected to consciousness. You're still connecting to, you know, you were still able to do that. And having that, I didn't know that that it was a custom or tradition in Sikh culture to start with meditation. Like, it was just like, you know, I don't know that, obviously, because, you know, like the way that you know, from my upbringing and things like that too, we don't really learn those things in school. So like, I'm one of those guys that would learn that too. So, but I feel like I would benefit if I had started my life a little bit different, because I'm also trying myself, you know, to learn how to meditate. There's a lot of people in my life that tell me you should meditate, but I don't know how to do it effectively, because I have this thing called ADD or ADHD, and my mind just wanders and it goes, and I have a really hard time fixating on it. You know, I can be silent for a couple seconds, but then I'm like, okay, that's cool. I wonder what I'm going to have for supper today. Like, you know, so are you able to help people like myself overcome those challenges?
Yeah, and it's not even overcoming. It's just using the intelligence that you're working with, but doing it consciously. Okay. So do you know how you just said there, like, you've got ADD or ADHD, and you're trying to silence your mind, and then you go off to what I'm going to have for dinner tonight, or what I'm going to have for breakfast.
Yeah.
So the meditative component of that is, first of all, you're not trying, like in meditation, you're not trying to silence your mind. That's a huge myth. Like, just because this is the thing, when things get translated from Eastern to Western, Western languages and the Western approach to life is very sensory. So when you see someone sitting like that, you assume they're sitting silently in their minds.
Right.
But that's not what's happening. What they're doing is they're taking a moment out of their life so they can be with their minds.
But I talked my ear off.
Right. So do you know how you said, do you know how you said, like, you get distracted? The only thing is now is rather than right now you're having the impulse, like it's almost like the idea of breakfast is pulling you into the experience. It's like, oh, you know, like this happening, and you're trying to go into the experience. In meditation, what you would do is you'll get ahead of that and be conscious of it. So if your mind goes to what am I going to have for breakfast, you go into the memory banks and you make it a conscious process. Well, I had this last week and I'm going to have this, but I've got this in my cupboard. Do it very consciously, very, very consciously, until the thought arrives at an equilibrium, until the thought arrives at, like, this is what's going to happen for dinner. And then what happens is, if you just go into meditation, consciously thinking about what you're going to have for breakfast or dinner or whatever, then awaken from your meditation and create it, you've successfully meditated and manifested.
Okay. So I want to roll with it, not fight with it.
No, you roll with it, because what will happen is once you get into the habit of that, what will happen is you'll start realizing that you're getting to calmer, healthier states of being. Right. Because you're not anxious thinking about what decision should I make, or what should I do, how should I do it, how am I going to do it. I mean, the beginning stages of meditation, what I'm teaching a lot of people, is learning how to develop or create a solution to a problem. So in your case, what am I going to have for dinner is a problem. Create the solution, bring it into life.
Well, eat before I meditate would be the quickest solution. Then I wouldn't be thinking about food, right?
But then you could be dealing with stomach issues, and that's going to be another hindrance. You've got to really think about it.
So what's interesting about that, and to reinforce that, as I've also done in the past, float tank, so like a sleep sensory deprivation. I've only done it once. The maximum time we were allowed to do was 2 hours. It was my first time. I said, I'll do it. I'll do the 2 hours and I'll try it, because a lot of people, I guess they can't do it for so long or whatever, but I shit you not, that it took an hour and 55 minutes for there to be no thoughts in my mind. And there was like 5 minutes of absolute silence. I did get there, but it took that long to get there. And when there was silence and nothing, I started to see, you know, some lights and things starting to materialize, and then beep, time was up, had to get out and go. So I had a brief moment of seeing something that was outside of those thoughts, but it took that long for me to get into that. So what was I experiencing, or what do you think I may have been experiencing at that time before I went out? Because that was nothing. It was gone.
Nothing. So this is where I'm going to talk a little bit about the process, and it's kind of almost like the journey of meditation, because you almost kind of did a bit of a journey of meditation there. But you didn't do it consciously, and it just kind of got to a point where your brain, because you weren't engaged, because you were forced to engage with all those thoughts, to a point where it's like there was no necessity for them to be there. They just dropped. So it's almost like you kind of unconsciously stepped into that state. Now the difference when meditating in that state, what happens is you've got where you are now in the present moment. And in meditation, you're going essentially back to the source of all creation. In between where you are now and that source of creation and whatever's beyond that is a series of creations. These are thoughts, feelings, ideas, whatever. And the process is you've got to detach from all of these things in order to get to this thing. Because it's almost like, imagine you walking from point A to point B. But as you're making your way to point B, people are trying to grab you and pull you and keep you from accessing all these different, trying to get you to go to point B. So that's what every thought and feeling is. That little experience that you experience, that little silenceness, that space, was basically is that moment you detach from material creation into material experience. So everything connected to your body, your memories, your thoughts, and your feelings, you got to a point where you got to the end of dealing with them, and you got to the end of needing to deal with them. It's almost like you just forced yourself to process through, and you pushed and pushed and pushed, and you got there. And in that space, your meditation now can start activating and begin.
Okay. So I was there.
Because even though you're meditating to that point, what happens is you've got your present moment, and then you detach from that, and you enter your state of meditation. You detach from thought, feeling, and then if there's a thought or feeling that you want to connect with, let's just say you have this bright, like you're making your way back to this state, and there's a bright idea you really want to connect with. There's a point in your journey getting to that space whereby, like, this is a world-changing idea. I want to study this. You lock in your meditation there, because you can lock into a meditation at any point. Basically, it's almost like you're consciously shooting off into that creation.
I see. Yeah.
So anyway, you detach, and then you enter this state where it's now you're at the end of a material thought. And now you're truly entering now the space of mind where there's this wonderful journey of where you can explore anything.
Yeah, it was interesting. It was like I was about to go somewhere, and then that interrupting thought. So I can understand, because when I went into this, it was with an investigative mind, because I was trying to film it as well and try to get an understanding of what it would be like. So there's a lot of like exploratory thoughts as well. It's like, okay, this is a nice feeling. This is cool. What does it mean? So I literally processed a lot of stuff. But I think I got to the point where I didn't have anything else to talk to myself about, But I mean, that feeling. So if I were to recreate that, knowing I could get there, how would I be able to, or should I, condense the amount of time it takes me to get there? So that way I can spend more time in that state during this meditation or flow tank.
This is where my lessons actually truly begin, because this is the common question. Like, I experience this or want to experience this. How do I get there faster and quicker? Yeah. So there's a couple of stages that you need to learn. So this is why mindfulness is not going to work for you, because mindfulness is just pushing you back to the present moment. Mindfulness and being in the present moment is kind of like your landing ground. It's where you land, it's where you take off from. Things get a bit wild in there, come back and then go back in. So the first stage to any meditation practice, of course, is being comfortable, which you were in. You were in the float tank. You were in a comfortable, safe, secure environment. You were successfully able to shut out the outside world and lock in with your thoughts. So you entered kind of like that tier. And so to get there quicker, there's a couple of techniques that I can share with you. The first one is conditioning your mind. So you have to train your mind to detach from thoughts and feelings that aren't serving or enlightening you. And this is what we do. We return to breath. Now, is it okay if I go into detail with each of these techniques?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So for breathing, so what you do is whenever you want to train your mind to start detaching from things that you just don't want to attach yourself to, like the thoughts of breakfast and dinner, which are just not necessary to process in a meditation, right? You got to train your mind to detach and let that thought be and come back to your center. Because what happens when you attach to something, this is you, consciousness within your mind. This is a random thought or feeling. That random thought or feeling consumes you. And what you want to do, the moment you realize you've been captured, you inhale, exhale, center. So you're using your breath. What you're doing essentially is you're returning to breath. You're not focusing on breath. You are returning to breath. You are returning to a state prior to the creation in question, or the creation that consumed you. Because literally nothing in your material life can exist after.
And that kind of pauses the brain too in that instant.
Yeah,
as
so
well.
You're now conditioning your mind. It's like, do you know when we experience pain, like physical pain? And we're focusing on breath because it's so intense. Like, it's like, I can't focus on this. I'll just breathe. I'm just going to breathe through it. When women are giving labor, so if females are giving labor, it's that constant return to breath. And it's the most important state, because now I'm going to talk a little bit about why breath is so important. Because this is where English is a very difficult language to teach meditation in, because it's just missing a bunch of words you need to teach meditation effectively. So have you heard of a concept called prana?
No.
So prana in Sanskrit is a word that alludes to life force or vital life principle. when I teach kids, is like prana is the magic life. It's the life magic that we all have. It enables us to breathe and function and just gives life to stuff. You know, like if we consider prana magic, breathing is the pump that gives the magic alive, right?
Okay.
Nothing in creation can exist without prana. You know, so when you're reliving a thought, you're breathing, and that thought has captured your breath, your pump. So it's now consuming your prana. You're giving life to that thought. So when you return to breath, you're telling your mind, no, prana, come back. You're harnessing your magic back in. You're taking the magic, the life, the vital life principle away from the memory, the thought, and the feeling, and back to your own conscious center, your conscious control. That makes sense?
Yep.
Okay. So once you've harnessed back control, what happens is it's almost like you got these three components. You've got prana, and you have your pump, that's the magic. You got the magic, and you got the pump, the breathing that keeps the magic alive. And then there's you, consciousness. So wherever consciousness is focused on, that is where prana will get sent.
Okay.
So we're having this conversation. Therefore, we're having this conversation, and I'm focused on you. Therefore, my life energy, my life focus, I'm giving life to whatever this conversation is. That's what's happening. We are creating in this direction. So wherever consciousness flows, that is where creation goes.
Okay. We have a question from one of our YouTube members. Serena is asking, would you consider prana analogous to Reiki?
To Reiki.
Am I saying that right?
Reiki is a form of energy form. So almost, yeah. When you're doing, I'm not an expert in Reiki, but Reiki, when you're doing energy healing, it is like you're moving prana. It's almost like prana is, it's your force of life. It's a life-giving force. It's the life-giving principle. So if you're moving energy, you are moving prana. But also what you're doing is you're telling consciousness to focus on this specific area of the body. Mm-hmm. So therefore, prana is going to flow into it. Yes.
Okay. Another question from another YouTube member, Allison Yellowknee. She says, question for Terry, been astral travel since a child. Would you consider this a form of meditation? Because once I got into meditation, it felt the same. My crown chakra opens and I can travel.
Astral traveling is a little different to meditation, because with meditation, you are learning to exist as pure consciousness and consciousness in form. You are learning to exist more so basically akin to the source of creation itself. With astral projection, you are carrying your life experiences with you to go to these places. You're still kind of viewing them with your identity. From what I've heard from people who tend to astral project. And so what's happening is in meditation, what's happening, you're sitting in meditation, but you're actually consciously astral projecting. Which is a meditation within itself. It's like, I consider sleep a type of meditation, dreaming a type of meditation, astral projection a type of meditation, experiencing life itself is a type of meditation, playing music. But everything is, in my world, is a meditation, because if as long as you're having a conscious process, if you're consciously involved in the experience, it's essentially a meditation. And so yeah, when it comes to astral projection, you are meditating, but you're entering a state of astral projection. Your body, you've trained your intelligence to astral project when you're in this kind of, rested conscious state, or consciously rested state, I should say.
Okay, interesting. Where's this coming from though? Where are we going when we're meditating and information? Yeah, I don't know if you want to finish naming your steps and then lead into that, but I was just thinking to myself how confident you are and how sure you are and understand your methods, because those are things that I identify in the investigative world as different ways to connect to this place. I'm trying to, I call it the ultra spectrum, but I'm trying to figure out where this is. So where is that? Where are we going?
The thing is, the where is what we're experiencing now.
Okay.
And this is that question you're asking is where we're going is the wrong question, because then what happens is you make your life and your life experience the integral experience. Let me explain that a little bit in more detail. So, and we can go back to the steps later. But and detachment's the key to getting to this access. In this state of experience, you're essentially experiencing this sense of kind of clarity and nothingness, but then all this wonderful or space just opened up for you after all your thoughts and feelings that you were processing. It's not essentially, you're not going anywhere. If anything, you're just retreating back to that source, like, or that state. You're returning from a place, you know. So to explain it a little bit more simply, life and the experience that you're having now and here to date, if this becomes your integral experience, if this is your basically central experience of where you are now, then if you think that you're going somewhere within your mind, within your meditation, yes, you are going towards different aspects of creation. So, for example, if you're going into meditations thinking, I want to go here, I want to go visit here, I want to go here, you are essentially moving your consciousness through different realms of creation, going through astral projecting is an example of that. You know, intergalactic travel through meditation. Me sitting on the moon as a kid, that was me going to the moon, because it's me consciousness visiting another creation. You know, the meditation itself, like you're essentially returning to the source of creation, the source of which you entered into life and came into being. Because if you notice, our bodies are the ones that are going somewhere, because we're evolving, we're growing, we're going closer to death, we're moving through time, space. And as you just look at evolution itself, where does the journey? Are we going, you know, are we moving forward? Are we going backwards? So the journey of where is what we're experiencing now, and any other creation that exists within the ether and within the universe and so on. But when you're truly meditating and navigating into those states of truth, and that, let's call it, for lack of a better term, states of transcendence and enlightenment, you are returning to that state. And that's why they call it enlightenment, because you're enlightened as to what all this means and what all happens in the state of creation. Yeah. It's the source of all of this information that we have to navigate and move our lives forward. It's the place. I don't like to say that I go to this place like just on a whim. It's like it takes a lot of work and a lot of energy to get there. And I've experienced areas of it throughout my life. And it just feels like there's a whole library of knowledge. And really, that's all it is. You're navigating through knowledge to the source of it, where it all began, kind of like how it all started and what it all began as.
Now, there's different, like tracking that there's different methods to get there, different ways of getting there, different types of people who try things to get there. Yeah. And different times to go back there. Is there the same place every time?
So this is where it gets really tricky now.
Okay.
This is how I would describe it. For the most part, I would say yes. You know, it's kind of like you have the nucleus of an atom and you have electron, neutron, proton. They come together and there's something else creates. What you're essentially doing is you're going back to the nucleus. You know, so now imagine like your entire body full of cells and atoms and whatnot. You know, even then it's still going to come back to that one nucleus. And then you got that center integral consciousness, which is dictating how every single nucleus within your body is operating and whatnot. And that is a very loose way of putting it. I'm not a scientific teacher, so I would love to speak to someone in physics to explain it a lot better. So it's kind of like you're going through layers of that. You're going through a layer of one source. So the source of creation of our body would arguably could be like creation, or it could be your mum, like an integral person. You go back to a point. But then who created your mum? You know, like, and then you go to that, you connect with the consciousness within, and you're like, well, who created consciousness? Right. All right, let's figure that out now. Go into meditation, you dive in deeper and deeper, then you come to another state, and you're like, well, what created that? You go deeper and deeper and deeper, and what created that? You can go deeper and deeper and deeper. And there's a risk here where you can end up in an infinity loop, where you find, because what happens is you've got the source of creation, and then you got a state of nothingness before that. This is where it's going to get really tricky to explain. So this is where you go to this state of nothingness, which is like nothing exists. It's like this. It's like in the Torah where they say first there was a thought and then there was a creation, like that. It's like when we bring ideas into life, it comes up in thought and then comes into creation. You know, so there was something that occurred and then something came into creation, and from that all of this came into creation, from that all of this came into creation. So you're kind of like going through layers and layers and layers and layers and layers of that. And this is where knowledge of meditation's gone missing, and this is what a lot of the Buddhist monks are doing at the end of their life, that just close their eyes and transcend, is because there's a point in which you cross over and you've left your body because you've gone beyond the knowledge needed to sustain or required for you to navigate through life. It's like, I call it the last portal, the last door you open. And if you walk through it, say goodbye to your body because you're gone. Because you've moved consciousness so far from your experience of life that it literally cannot hold on to it anymore. You have to let go of consciousness itself, of prana itself, to understand where there's true source and go beyond from that. And only very few people in the world can and will achieve this state, because essentially it's a death sentence.
Mm-hmm.
When I remember my first client who was extremely suicidal, my only response to him was like, well, if you're suicidal, how about you do it my way? And I taught him meditation. And the thing is, as you're going through these layers of knowledge, you start becoming more and more enlightened. You go beyond your traumas. You go beyond, like PTSD becomes specks of dust in comparison to what you start learning. And when someone's got nothing to lose, go there. And then you start realizing, well, actually, you know what? I want to stay in this experience of life. I've got a lot to do. There's so many things you can do. You become so enlightened as to what life is, what it can be, how you can do it, that how far you want to go.
That is a really brilliant way to take a negative and trick them into a positive. So
it's not tricking. I'm being very honest. I'm saying go there. It's not my fault you want to come back now.
Yeah, true.
I'm just teaching you how to meditate. That is all.
But you know the possibility of that too, right? So it's still, it's helpful.
Yeah, and the beautiful thing is, it's like when you ever see, I've read about it and I've seen people who, in passing, like a lot of senior people, and when they're in passing, they look at when people die in their sleep, don't they look so peaceful?
I guess.
Think about when people pass in meditation, that state of just like you're dying in a state of contemplation. Like, how beautiful is that? You literally, rather than dying with your last breath, you die with your last thought.
True.
And what a different, and this to me is like, and the thing is, you can get to states where once you know that that's the last door, and you've meditated enough to point where that's the last place for me to go, then it's a choice. Death becomes a choice for you, and you are fearless and judgment free, and you got nothing to hold on to in life, because you could just navigate through it knowing that you've got this portal whenever you want to enter through.
That's interesting.
But that's deep states of meditation. Like and that's why you'll notice Buddhist monks live compassionately, and they live conflict free. And they live with they just live with the very lowest of means required, because you want to limit how many attachments you have to get there. Would you, if you're trying to get to this place, do you really want conflicts in your mind to have to detach from to get there? It's just that's like an extra month or year or 2 years or 10 years of meditating.
Yeah, which is probably why it took me 2 hours to get to that place, because I had to vent to myself, because this is what I wanted. Ruin the experience for me, but
if you go to a mountain, shave your head, join the monastery, and just live literally on the basic of basic needs, you clear your mind of all of that conflict. You literally remove yourself from society and people and the world, and you consciously dedicate your life to transcending. The secrets of the spiritual world, I tell you.
It sounds easy, but how do you afford this lovely area in which you're staying in if you just forget about all those things?
Like I said,
we are conformed to some rules.
Yes. Give me an example of one of those rules.
Well, I don't know. The places that we're in, we have to pay rent. We have to pay more if we want to stay in there. But if you're transcending, then I guess that doesn't matter. But if you are coming back to this place temporarily, you still need to do things in order to keep it this place. You're still holding on to that. So how would you get to a point where none of this stuff matters, but without knowing that none of this stuff matters? You get what I'm saying?
Well, it doesn't matter to consciousness. To consciousness itself, it's kind of like, well, I don't need this, but your avatar, your body does.
Right.
So what are you going to do to take care of that and navigate that to a healthy experience? I pay rent. I pay my bills. I do my books for my business and whatnot. I wrote a thing to help me resource myself to create more work and knowledge. Because if I can't afford a pen and paper, I can't teach, well, I can teach, but, just have access to it. But this is what like fundamental rules as well, especially when you're playing in the higher realms of consciousness. You always have to meet where the collective awareness is at and be able to deliver creations that can move them just a little bit forward in the evolutionary journey so that you can have a little bit more comfortable experience in life. I look at the world and I look at what's happening, even with all the chaos that we've just experienced and are still experiencing. And I'm thinking, we are still having the best experience of life possible. We went through a pandemic and we were only inconvenienced for a couple of years, and we didn't have as many deaths as other pandemics have caused. But granted, it was severe. Nevertheless, regardless of what came about and what didn't come about, a lot of us still had access to those basic resources, that we had systems in place that enabled us to communicate. And that's when evolution's heading in the right direction. When communication is open and communication is easily accessible, right? Granted, yes, publicly in what you post, there's probably a lot of censorship around it. But me and you having this conversation live right now, I can say anything and you can say anything freely, right? Communication is the key to evolution, because before we can operate as a conscious collective, we need to operate as a physical collective first, as a material collective. This is in process. This is in motion. You got people taking psychedelics all over the place saying, well, this needs to happen. This needs to happen. It's just ignorant awareness. It's not awareness in action. It's just ignorant mess of, I know this, I feel this, and this is what needs to happen for me to facilitate this experience that I'm trying to bring into the world. No, you belong in life. There's a reason why you exhale and the nature inhales, and the trees and the plants exhale what we inhale. We have to maintain and sustain that cyclical connection in life. Without that, it's over. That's what slows down our awareness. That's what slows down our evolution. And it's important because that's what makes this particular planet, Earth, an incredible place to be. Because you have this beautiful preservation of life. You get to become one with the planet itself. And as a result, we have to be very careful with how much knowledge. Like, if everyone started meditating to this extent, which even I can meditate, like, I'm not saying I'm an expert meditator. I'm really good at meditating, but ain't no Buddha, So if everyone started even operating at that level, we would significantly advance our life to a point where AI would come into the world, we'll be able to replicate consciousness, we'll be able to transfer it into bodies, we'll mess with the balance so much that we'll inevitably destroy ourselves. So there's rules that I can't express in words that are in play, and it's designed intelligently. It's designed the same way that your body knows how to blink. It's designed the same way that your heart has to pump, and how you can have ADHD and mental health issues, but your heart can still pump. It's that same intelligent design that's operating everything. So there's a reason for it. We may be ignorant to it at the moment, and we may be questioning why it's happening the way it's happening, but it's happening for a reason. The whole planet is a body, just as your body, and it functions as one. And everything that's happening in the world it's sad, it's a lot, but there's also a lot of good, and a lot of good evolution that's come out of it too. So I want to really share this message now. Don't let the negative aspects of the world wear you down, because when you realize what's really going on and you see the bigger picture of things, you start realizing everything's playing out exactly how it's supposed to be. And if you step into your own truth and you follow your truth forward, nothing will bother you. Everything will come to you as you need, because prana is in service to truth. Truth follows where consciousness goes. So if your reality is shitty and horrible, then that's your truth, and that's what prana is going to feed, and that's why you're going to have those experiences in life. You start realizing the bigger picture, connecting to a beautiful, healthy relationship with life and with the ether and everything around you, and with creation itself. Boom, prana is going to start serving that, and you communicate that with nature with every breath. The data that's missing is like that inhale and exhale exchange with us and the earth. Granted, there's a lot of chemicals, oxygen and carbon dioxide being exchanged, and a bit of nitrogen, I think. I can't remember my science lesson. But with it, that is a lot of communication too. The state of my mind and the state of the collective planet's mind. And that's being sent through and through and through and through and through and through with each inhale and exhale. So if we're all conscious of a healthy mindset, we could probably move this planet a couple of millimeters from the sun to save it. You never know. The possibilities are endless when you really understand how the intelligence works.
Yeah, no, I understand that. So Mike, our audience for this podcast and many of the things that we do, they identify as what we call paranormal or UFO experiencers. We call them experiencers. So, do you think meditation would be a helpful tool for those who have been affected with some sort of paranormal or what they perceive to be as paranormal or extraterrestrial experience in this consciousness or wherever dimension we're experiencing this in? How would that be beneficial?
Absolutely. Where do we start? Pick one. Where are we going? Paranormal, alien? What are we doing? Pick me an entity that you're interrogating with and how meditation can help.
Well, paranormal simply means anything that's not normal. So everything that's a ghost. Let's say,
Okay.
Let's say you have an experience where you receive a very intricate message or in the form of artwork, and you express it, and you don't know what it means, but it has a whole bunch of symbols that make sense to other people as you move forward, and you're wondering where that information came from, or as simply as Allison said, an alien. You can pick one.
You said it yourself, wondering where that experience came from. Meditation is the study of creation. And if you've brought a creation out into the world and you're trying to discover the source of it, sit in meditation and go locate the source.
What if meditative state didn't exist and then it came in?
Right. That's what I'm saying. Like your meditation doesn't become about trying to connect with that and bring more artwork in. So you've had this experience, you've connected with something and you've produced a piece of art. You have no idea what it means. You have no idea how you connected to this thing, how it got connected to you, and you got presented art. You know, in my world, I'd be like, do you know where, if you don't know where that comes from, go find out, because that could be a demon that's coming from the subconscious mind. That could be something coming from a past life memory. That could be something coming from the ether out there. You could have received that message from your best mate down the road. Where is the source of that creation? Go find it. Go sit in meditation, detach, and go locate where that information came from. Spend a lifetime doing it. Maybe that's the purpose of what you need to exist in, and discover how you did it and what you did. Meditation is literally the study of creation. So if you don't know the source of a creation, go find it. And that's what enlightenment is, to discover the source of us, this creation of life itself as a creation. You detach away until you get to there, and you lock into the meditation when you feel like you found a clue.
Okay. So medication. Yeah, I said medication. Meditation.
The best medication.
That's the best medication. Yeah, meditation is medication. We'll say it from there. So no, that's an interesting thought. Like, I mean, so the scientific mind comes in, the analytical, the investigative stuff. So what I try to do with experiencers who do convey a lot of unusual things, and a lot of this is happening in what appears to be or coming from this ether, the ultra spectrum, or some other place in meditative states or astral travel, out-of-body experiences, all these subculture type of phenomenon that's around the consciousness or subconsciousness. What I've been trying to do is figure out a way to measure that, or at least bring that into the material life to have scientific evidence of it existing. So for the individual, it's good for them. It's a good lesson. It's a good experience for them to carry on and make their decisions and live their life. But on a collective, how would someone like myself, who doesn't really understand science in the way that it works and all these, like the scientific, I understand the scientific method, but I mean like the quantum side of it, of how it works. How do I prove it?
This is where we have to do a lot of opening of the mind, because right now, what do we got? Ghosts, aliens, maybe demons.
UFOs,
what else?
UFOs.
Okay. We have, 4 key sources of information? Right. When you start meditating, you start realizing the phenomenal expansive state of creation. and you start realizing how networked intelligence is. Like, it's a network. Intelligence is this is why I love tech and love computers, because it literally is, we are creating life very similarly to how life itself was created, but in a very different way. And with the metaverse now, I mean, I could go into that later, but it's all a network. So let's just say you're a point on this network, like you're a real clear state of like you yourself are a point on this network. You're receiving a signal, but you need to map out where in the network that came from. So if I was to think out loud, like this will be a meditation, like how will we scientifically measure? First thing I would do is scan the brain. I need to rule out what's going on in the brain. I need to understand that this is not coming just simply from the intelligence within the body. Mm-hmm. That's the first thing I would need to rule out first. So I will do study of the brain. Mm-hmm. And it has to be during these moments when they're receiving their information. Mm-hmm. Study the brain. Then try and replicate that in a lab or in a lab. How can I replicate that experience? And see if the replication of that then presents this out into the world. Then basically that's just human intelligence you're playing with. Okay. Right. However, I guess I've gone.
No, I just keep going. I'm going to throw a wrench in there, but I just want to keep going.
No, throw the wrench now. Let's go.
Well, so from a security perspective and a triage perspective, I'm dealing with someone in the moment that believes that they're seeing these things in their mind in real time. How do I differentiate the difference between a mental health episode in real time while at the same time believing the possibility that they're telling the truth, when I, as a professional who is a private investigator and a security officer, also believe in this stuff? Right. So because you need to take in consideration mental health, but at the same time I'm biased because I also believe in this and I'm studying consciousness. Mm-hmm. So is there a way in real time to determine the validity of the experience?
In the difference. Okay, well, this is one of this. Okay,
because you can't study the brain. That's after the fact. Like right now.
Okay, it's happening right now. So the way to measure that, again, this is where you're going to have to take someone who can really see how intelligence operates within the mind. I'm good at that, but I'm not the best at it. I'm not someone who can say this neuron's firing, but I know I can work with someone who probably could, like especially neurodivergent individuals. I know people who can literally tell the sex of a baby before you can tell if a female is pregnant before they're in bed. Like, these are just traits of a neurodivergent mind, and that's and again another area we can discuss later. But for someone, let's say, where is it coming from? So the example I can give you, and the best way I can understand it, is when I was working with my first client who was schizophrenic, or diagnosed schizophrenic, hearing voices. I had to figure out and understand where these voices were coming from. How was I able to determine that? How do I know that voice is not coming from an abuser that's been conditioning this brain for years and years and years and years and years in childhood, that's been repressed, and it's coming from the subconscious mind, versus it becoming from an alien entity, versus it coming from an inner demon, versus it coming from a ghost? Like, there's so many variables. How can I know what's the source of this voice that's in this person's mind? Could it be that this person that's in this conscious body transcended their ability from a past life, and there's two conscious entities operating in the same body, and the voice belongs to the original conscious entity that was from that body? How am I supposed to find that out? I can't. So I teach the person meditation to find out for themselves and let them trust in the truth. Remember what I said earlier, meditation is to seek truth. No one has the right to tell you or diagnose you what your truth is. That's for you to assess.
This is perfect, because I set it up that way because I wanted you to come back to that, because that's the, by encouraging them to explore, we don't have to conform to these labels.
Remember, science is there to discover the truth as fact, to be able to present the truth as fact.
And there's personal truths, there's personal truth and personal facts, and then there's global truth and global facts. So
there's only universal truths.
Well,
there are only universal truths, and there are only universal facts. You can't have two truths can't occupy the same space.
Well, yes. Okay. No, yeah. I'm looking at the. You're right. What?
There are personal responses to the truth. There are personal relationships to the truth.
Right.
You know, like one who's having dire disconnection to their faith and spirituality will deny this all-encompassing truth that exists or that doesn't exist. It'd be a very hard time accepting that, even if the experience is there and real. Some I've dealt with people in bereavement. They've lost a really loved one, lost a child, for example. I don't care what I feel and think. It's not worth it. It's not real. Just consciously denying a truth that they experience because of very traumatic experience out here in life. But when you teach meditation, even when I'm working with scientists and people who study the brain, I'm teaching them how to exist and see beyond their physical senses so that they're able to ignite their physical senses to a higher level, to become, for lack of a better term, or actually, no, maybe this is actually quite an accurate term, to move from operating in a very neurotypical scientific way and start operating in a very neurodivergent scientific way. Because when you look at, I've been teaching meditation to both types of individuals, and I can tell you, a neurotypical version operation is operating on one thread of intelligence at a time, can generally only focus on one thing at a time. Neurodivergence, operating on several threads of intelligence at a time. So you tell me which scientist is going to be able to figure it out.
Let's hold that thought. Okay, so we'll pause right here, but we'll continue after a message from our sponsors. If you're listening to the audio-only version, head over to youtube.com/the Experiencer Support Association. You will see the video that goes with this audio. You're listening to Beyond the Tinfoil Hat, a podcast by the Experiencer Support Association, and we will be right back.
It's your business. It's your property. Your assets are worth protecting. Blacklight Investigative and Surveillance Services specializes in patrolling and inspecting residential or commercial property against fire, theft, vandalism, terrorism, and illegal activity. People and buildings are monitored to prevent crime. Keep your property, your people, and your assets safe from threat. Our elite staff are dual licensed private investigators and security guards. Blacklight Investigative and Surveillance Services. Go to blacklightiss.com.
The same thing that draws aliens to our planet is the same thing that draws us to others. Exploration, curiosity, sustainability of life. That's why we go. It would make sense as to why they're visiting here.
Travis! Quit playing around, man. Get back here. Travis!
The last thing I remember was this numbing shock. Stunning sort of a feeling. Very powerful.
Get away from me!
I was just out of my mind with fear, just screaming the whole time.
It's been theorized that aliens prefer remote areas because they don't want to attract attention. Whatever it is that they're doing, they would want to do that in a less populated area. There are multiple accounts of the same thing from people from all over the world. People that do not know each other, do not live in the same cultures, and they're all looking up, they're all seeing things in the sky. So it would be naive of us to think that
Ryan is one of Canada's leading new UFO investigators. He conducts and oversees UFO investigations on a constant basis and was really taken by his research. He's compiled a tremendous amount of data regarding UFOs in Canada. And just as interesting, he really goes over how UFO investigations are done and what are some of the mistakes that people make when they submit evidence. Note for starters, don't edit your videos or photos before you send them. If you want to hear more follow-up conversation between Ryan and myself, you can go to richardolamembers.com, where we have a candid conversation on ufology, the paranormal, and more. And remember, while we learn and grow and search for the truth, let's be good to each other.
Welcome to the Observation Deck, a state-of-the-art, one-of-a-kind virtual platform that takes video conferencing to the next level by using avatars to navigate a campus, just like you would in real life. First, you install the application and design your very own unique avatar. Then you're free to explore the various areas of the campus at any time from anywhere. There's so many areas and activities to choose from on the platform. There's a 1,000-seat auditorium, a large expo hall, a movie theater, a nightclub, an art gallery, and even a beach. Come attend a conference or take a class or hear a lecture. Meet new friends and interact directly with presenters. It's all right here on the incredible Observation Deck campus. Where in the world will you go?
Have you ever wondered, or maybe just thought to yourself, if there were others just like you? You know, people with extraordinary abilities, psychogenic advancement, and perhaps unique intuitions. Maybe you just wondered if there were other people who experienced unimaginable, unexplained, or even unusual and paranormal events. Are there people who have more questions, more fears than answers? Well, you're not alone. You've never been alone. We believe you. Sign up for EA today by going to tesacan.org/EA. That's TESACAN.org/EA. Welcome back, everybody. You're listening to Beyond the Tinfoil Hat. Did you know we have a private community chat for members only on YouTube? On our YouTube channel. Try that again. Did you know we have a private community chat for members of YouTube? If you become a member, you will get bonus content like exclusive videos, including bloopers, behind the scenes, and members only Q&A. Also, if you were a member, you get to comment and ask your questions on these live feeds. Head over to tesacan.org/ I'm reading from a script and I lost my place. So you know what? Let's just forget that I'm even doing this. This is live and off the cuff. Welcome back, everybody. Terry, how you doing? How was that? How was that break? Was that good for you?
It was good. I was watching it was very informative. I was like, wow, I would love to go paranormal investigating. It sounds so interesting.
Well, it's good that you watch them. Some people take the break, some people don't. And I saw that you were actively nodding your head and things like that too. And I kind of realized that, you know, like I'm having a hard time comprehending and understanding how consciousness works. I'm aware that it exists, and I'm aware that there are these markers and signs and that indicate that something is happening. And I've always been trying to figure out how and where it's happening in this world. And then I've been starting to learn and meet new people that is explaining to me that it's possible that it's happening in all these other places. So when we meditate, so that's, you know, so I spent a lot of time trying to understand what may be happening to remove the panic, to remove the crisis, to minimize the trauma. But we don't have a lot of what we're looking for and trying to build a team on is resources to send people that are experiencing traumatic events or being affected traumatically by these experiences, because we don't have answers yet. We're just trying to figure out what they all have in common for these types of experiences. Having learning what I've just learned from you, and we should talk about your book and where we could find it. But I feel like that would be a very good resource, to refer people to as well. Because if you're going to encourage them to explore their experience through meditation, while I'm learning the science as much as I can to get it documented in this part, so kind of bridging a gap between dimensions and things, but we're still taking care of the people, and we have there's a similarity in that. I'm not nowhere close to understanding the stuff that you're explaining, but you're able to explain it well to me, and I'm comprehending that. So I enjoy that. So I just want to say thanks, and I'm learning.
Good. This is good.
So you've mentioned neurodivergence, right? Is that am I saying that right?
Yes.
So you've mentioned that quite a lot. Can you describe to me and the rest of the audience what exactly that is and what you mean when you're bringing that up?
Okay, so the way I like to describe it is neurodivergence is a way of operating intelligence and the way intelligence is operating in a fashion that is not typical to the way our societal structures have developed. Now, of course, this again moves then into, and because of that intelligence, the way it's operating, it then brings about things like autism, ADHD, dyslexia, learning difficulties, so on and so forth. And there's different severities of such. And you'll start speaking with individuals with autism and ADHD. I mean, even hyperfocus is an incredible benefit, I think. Granted, it depends on what you're hyperfocusing on, but it's an incredible intelligence that you're able to do. And I believe, based on what I'm teaching and basically on what I'm learning from my students and teaching them meditation, you know, neurodivergence feels like how I mentioned earlier. Imagine there's you consciousness, and there's a thread of intelligence that's connected to your eyes. So if you're neurotypical, you're only able to look out of your eyes, but you'll not be focusing on your smell just as much because you're focusing here, right? So your intelligence is tethered to your eyes. You're told to look at this thing and focus solely on this thing. All of a sudden, you can't hear as well, you can't smell as well, you can't taste as well, because your eyes are locked in. Now, an example of neurodivergence, and there's so many examples, and there's so many ways it works, it's impossible because we haven't studied all of this the way it needs to be studied, is if I ask you to focus your eyes, you'll have the ability to thread your nose and your taste and your ears and everything else at the same time as well, at the same level, while focusing on that thing. So you're receiving a lot more information. And if you're not aware of that, and if you don't know how to handle that, it becomes overwhelming. But neurodivergence it's a very unique way. It's almost like you're operating on several threads of intelligence at a time. And let's just say there are an infinite number of threads of intelligence. A neurotypical version would only probably, best way to explain it in the short amount of time is imagine the strings on a violin. Okay. A neurotypical would be playing one string at a time, one note at a time, and one sound comes out at a time. So you've got this kind of consistent, okay, I know where this note is, I know where this frequency is coming from, I can handle this sound. Now imagine playing a symphony going up and down. There's your neurodivergence. It's operating several different frequencies at several different times. And unless it's managed and effectively understood and you can harness the intelligence, it's going to sound like a complete mess. And that's why then you have very difficult experiences being neurodivergent. But this is why I teach meditation, because this is how I know how to manage it. It's not the way to manage it. It's just how I've discovered to help people is, what if we can change the sound and how it works? What if we can sit, because really intelligence there's consciousness and then there's intelligence. And consciousness is an intelligence itself, but we're talking about intelligence of the body here. And without consciousness, you have no intelligence in the body. You can see in a dead body, the moment consciousness is gone, the body is dead, the intelligence has died, this connection has been severed. Right. So the operations of the body come after. So if you can harness consciousness and you can then start detaching from your experiences and navigating that space and having more control of how your thoughts, feelings, and sensations operate, and have them basically tame them so they're in operation to you and you're not in service to them, then you can have more of then we can move into kind of like this new equilibrium of intelligence and evolution of intelligence. And that's why a lot of neurodivergent people, and how I'm feeling since teaching neurodivergent individuals, is that neurodivergence seems to be an evolutionary development that we just haven't figured out how to manage yet. It's almost like we grew legs and we just haven't figured out that we can use them to walk.
What's interesting about the way you're thinking and the things that you've said too, I'm more on the side of starting to think that it's us. I just couldn't be able to explain it. And the way you've been able to explain it makes sense as to why we're just having meditative states and acts of consciousness without knowing it, and just associating it to these labels automatically, believing it to be paranormal, UFO, ghosts, and things like that. We're attaching these labels. So a lot of the work that I do is trying to make sure that what they think has happened is what actually happened. And then at the same time, we have this classification system to group these things in by removing the labels. So that way we can relabel them if need to, but at least put them in the proper categories based on these characteristics. But every time I do it in that systematic, and I'm trying to figure out the who, as an investigator, I'm always trying to find who did it, not what did it, or when did it happen, who did it. I'm always finding evidence to suggest that it's human, and I'm not finding anything that suggests anything other than that. And I haven't been able to explain that, and I still can't. But if you watch this video, you just explained that.
Well, everything, when you realize what consciousness is, everything does become external. Everything becomes a creation. So you find, when they talk about in the New Age world, finding your center, that's you residing as conscious. When they talk about the higher self, that's you existing within your mind. That's consciousness within itself. And once you learn to operate like that, you start realizing, oh, I am this, like, even moving consciousness, how I talk about it. I was like, you've got the body, you've got the mind, you've got the soul. You know, when you're in the body, you're having this experience with the 5 physical senses, you're playing with the intelligence of your body. You detach from the experience of the present moment and the body, and you move into your mind. And now you can access memory and perceptions of future states of being. And consciousness is still the same. You're the same thing within the body and then moving into the mind. What if now you're meditating and you detach from that and you enter the soul? You've just now moved consciousness into the soul and an essence of the source of creation itself. And you carry that like a little spaceship to navigate your way home. That's a whole different conversation, but it's possible.
Okay. So I'll kind of segue my question into what Dan Jones is asking here. He's asking if you can help people with anxiety and depression. On top of that, are you able to heal the body as well?
So when it comes, so this is one thing I'm learning really now, because I was speaking to an individual who has a severe disability as a result of his coming into life and his autism. And I'm trying to meditate and figure out a way to help move and stimulate his body. This is the weird thing, is a lot of this knowledge that I'm bringing out is not new knowledge. Most people think a lot of the stuff I'm saying is like, you must be accessing like the Akashic records and doing this and that. So no, I was reading scriptures and knowledge. I was having these experiences in my mind that I had no context for. So I had to read to put context to it.
I suppose if I read, I would learn this stuff too, but I have a hard time reading, paying attention.
But we need knowledge. The reason why we need knowledge is because you need, put it this way, there's so many times people have come to me, they're like, I was meditating and I came upon this bright white light and it was pure bliss. I was like, oh, that's a shame. And they look at me and they're like, why are you saying that? I was like, well, I mean, white light's boring. Where's the color? Where's the spectrum? Where's the creation in that? You've just, you found like a beautiful state of pure essence and consciousness. But that ain't the fun. Fun is now. Body's playing, navigating through the ether and the world and seeing in color. You know, but if you had, for example, that individual didn't have any spiritual knowledge or access, you know, to alternative scriptures. If they did, they'd be able to put context to that and go deeper into the light. That experience of light would be a lot longer because they're wrapping context of knowledge around what they're experiencing. It's almost kind of like how a TV works. You've got this light at the back and then you've got all these kind of things firing to develop the color. So when you're meditating, you're going beyond the point of what you know, like kind of the state that you went into. You got to a point where there's nothing that you can contextualize, and the only way you can contextualize it was stars and black. But if you had more knowledge and more context, you could probably design that and put context around it. And that's where all of a sudden you have a million deities that have been depicted in religions and all sorts of stuff, because they're just creating what they think it could be. A lot of this is itself. So this is where knowledge works in two ways and both ways. But in terms of depression and anxiety and healing the body, yoga is where if it's healing the body, yoga is where I begin. And yoga is taught so wrong in the West and in the East too, because when colonization happened, they replaced yoga with PE. Yoga and meditation in schools. You've got this wonderful ancient practice and knowledge to cure mind and body. And, you know, the British Empire rolls in and replaces it with PE. So you're like, with physical education, you're like, so you can understand why this knowledge got lost and it didn't get taught as well. So yoga now has become this thing for fitness.
They needed soldiers. That's why.
Yeah. So with yoga, what it teaches you, yoga teaches you to build a relationship with your breath and your intelligence. Meditation is the study of that and what else it can do, basically. But yoga is almost like the prerequisite if you want to start meditating effectively. Because the key to yoga is extending and elongating the breath. And if you want to cure your states of depression and you want to cure your states of anxiety, you need to be able to manage and navigate your breath better. Because you've got thoughts and feelings within your mind that are consuming you. Do you know how that I did earlier? You've got consciousness and you've got a thought or a feeling and you're consumed by it. And then you breathe to detach from it. If you have a strong relationship with your breath, you'll be able to detach so far from it that your depression's all the way out here and you are all the way out here. You're so far removed from it that you can sit in meditation now and study it and find the source of that depression. And then once you find the source of something, you can start discovering the solution to it. And boom, you've cured your depression. But we need to do the work. And that's why I said, if you can't do meditation, do yoga. Do something. Or what I recommend to people who love hiking or like being out in nature. I was like, instead, if you don't want to do yoga and you don't want to do the poses, the least you can do is try climb a mountain just simply breathing out your nose. Don't try and go for the pace of your body. Don't think just because you can run up the mountain doesn't mean you should. Why don't you go up the mountain breathing through your nose and let your nose, because this is the primary source of breathing. This is secondary to protect this. Right? If you can climb that mountain only breathing through your nose and go at the pace which is comfortable for you to breathe at your nose, I promise you that experience of climbing that mountain will be beyond anything you've experienced before in any fitness program. Going to the gym, try doing all your exercises through your nose. You'll be more mindful and you'll be breathing a lot better. You'll have a better mental health system. You'll be elongating your breath and you'll be building your body in tune with your intelligence and not pushing it beyond and dealing with any pain and struggle.
So you just kind of like clicked a box in me personally here. And if you notice my facial expressions, I'm just thinking totally lost me. And I highly doubt that my sensei is watching this podcast right now, but if he's hearing this, he's gonna laugh at me. But like, there is a kata in Goju karate called sanchin, and what it with these series of moves, I hate it. It's hard because it's slow and it's not fast. But every time I'm doing it wrong when I think I'm doing it right, he always says you're not breathing properly, you're not focusing properly. And if you're listening, I get it now. But I mean, to segue into that, like, could martial arts be another tool or a way? Because there is a lot of breathing. We do like, especially with pain, to absorb the attacks and things like that. So, what is your opinion on martial arts? Well,
martial arts, it's almost like you're focusing breath and consciousness in every movement. Your martial arts itself is a version of yoga because the way the intelligence operates and the way you use it, it's very similar. Like, I grew from a family of Sikhism, and Sikhism evolved to kind of this warrior status because what happened in the land and what's happening during that area in Punjab where Sikhism was really thriving. The people of the land, the farmers, had to become soldiers and warriors to protect the land and protect themselves and to defend the truth. To maintain equality between men and women and, to not allow women to be enslaved and whatnot. And so to train, so what they did, they converted their yogas and they grew and they were able to become these fierce warriors because they had these asanas, they had these ways of breathing and focusing the mind. So throwing a punch now wasn't the body throwing a punch. That punch was coming from a higher place because the punch was landing a creation. It was creating something. It wasn't just doing something to destroy. It was literally, there was a purpose and intention behind every move. There was incredible intelligent focus, and that all within itself are yogas and meditations. These, if you are working with your breath, and remember, every single creation literally cannot exist until you breathe. So if you're not breathing and you're trying to throw punches, you ain't thinking, you ain't doing anything. You're just,
you breathe in, you breathe out, you breathe in, you breathe out.
It goes breath, consciousness, prana, then anything else,
Yeah.
So it's an important tool. Breathe.
So you mentioned cannabis earlier too, when you were somewhere in your why you are the way that you are scenario there. I'm curious to know, since it is legalized in Canada, I mean, so obviously more people will be using that. It is encouraged to be used instead of alcohol and other things to treat a lot of other conditions. Would that affect this meditation and transcension at all?
Yes, in many ways, and no in many ways.
Okay.
So,
you want to talk about that?
Yeah, sure. Cannabis and meditation. I think I haven't smoked cannabis in a while, so there's no recent experiences that I can draw from, but there's many memories I can pull in. So, first of all, smoking cannabis and meditation. So, what you're doing with cannabis, and same with psilocybin mushrooms too. These are coming from plants. These are coming from nature. So they have their own intelligence within them. So it's almost like it's almost like you're inhaling a spirit or a deity within itself when you're smoking. So, and based on the intention of that energy, like for example, if you're smoking a strain that's then to be euphoric, it's going to connect you with euphoric memories, and in your meditation is going to be aligned that way. If you're taking a strain that's a very kind of takes you on a low and but you like indicas, for example, you'll start feeling and resonate, and your meditation will be leading in that direction too. So it's an influencer to your meditation.
Okay.
However, when you know how to harness the intelligence of it and consume it yourself and learn how to operate, and you practice this process of detachment, it's almost like it goes now. You've got prana, you got consciousness, you got breath, and now you've got the rocket fuel to take it wherever you want. If you can get ahead of the high, kind of like, do you know how you're saying you have ADD and you have these thoughts? If you can get ahead of it and let it flow and learn to navigate it a little bit, the things that you can do, the awarenesses that you can come upon, it's incredible.
Well, that's the goal. It's always been the goal, but there's so many squirrels. Like I just as soon as I get, I get distracted so easily.
You practice detachment, and that's what I teach mainly. Like meditation, I can't teach meditation really, because me teaching meditation is like me teaching someone sleep. I can't teach sleep. I can teach you how to get to sleep, or I can teach you how to get into the meditative state. So my lessons tend to center around how to detach so that you can meditate, because the meditation is just basically consciously connecting to whatever you're connecting to and resonating with, activating your meditation and whatnot. So when you got cannabis involved, the places you can experience are quite profound, and it's throughout historical practice too, but ultimately is a limitation. I've discovered this more recently since because I was in Canada for a while, and then I went back to England for 6 months, stopped smoking cannabis, and I realized that my meditation's got a lot richer. And with the way we're exploiting cannabis now, growing strains, like really starving the plant, so it can from the female plant and so it can grow more bud and overconsumption, right? It's going to have a negative effect, because you're going to start feeling that energy and tap into that as well if you do it enough, to the point where you realize this cannabis is not going to serve you the way it used to be able to serve you. If you listen to Bob Marley, and very pop culture reference, but if you listen to the words of Bob Marley and the way he talks about cannabis, you'll understand how cannabis and meditation actually work, and what he's talking about, and how it helps and how it supports. Cannabis is a great tool. I call it Shiva's meditation, because it just allows you just to flow and play within the ether. It can help you do deep states of processing too. But the thing is, smoking, like I smoke cannabis, but with meditation, you don't, like, so for example, if you're smoking to get high and you're with your buddies and you're smoking a joint, you'd probably smoke the whole joint or smoke half a joint, and you're past this whole joint until it's finished, right? With meditation, you only need to smoke a third of what you would normally smoke, because your senses are now locked off going into meditation. So how the high is playing within your mind, you're a lot more sensitive within.
You use it as a tool. Yeah.
And then you did, and the thing is, if you meditate effectively on cannabis, you'll notice you'll integrate and awaken from your meditation completely clear-minded and not high at all, because you've consumed the activity, you've done something with it, and you can just take another token, go back in, go and explore, and then you separate. And it's a tool for the meditation. It's not the meditation itself. It's kind of like fueling a plane. I'm going over here to this journey. I need this much fuel.
Might be a good hack for this ADD problem I have, by the sounds of it.
I would work on solving your ADD before the cannabis, because what will happen is your ADD and the cannabis will have a fun little relationship and just start messing with you a little bit. You'll feel the ADD in different directions. So if anything, it'll just slow down the ADD to a point. And what I can actually do, what I used to teach on cannabis with ADHD clients, was I'd give them a strain that would slow down their thought processes just enough so the ADD is active, but it's slow. Then teach them the process of sitting in consciousness, sitting in detachment, sitting in stillness so that you can observe what's going on. And it slows it down to a point that you can actually, while all this activity is going on over here, you can hone in and see what's happening over here. Resolve this, step back out, go into the next one, resolve that, step back out, go into the next one, resolve that. Until now, all your thoughts are streaming consciously and fluidly, and you can go to your higher state, kind of like the state you entered at the end of your float tank experience.
Yeah. Another light bulb just kind of went off too. I'm just thinking in terms of assisting in the investigative process. If I do happen to come across a lot of people that have blocked memories. So we sometimes use regression hypnotherapy to try and bring people back to those moments and then communicate on audio, those types of events. But with your methods and your strategy, it's useful because you would just tell them to meditate and focus on that event, and then they would have the answers. So is it possible to unlock the brain as well when there's a stuckage?
The brain, like I've since being in England, I had a lot more time to meditate because usually in Canada I'm doing a lot of work teaching and whatnot, whereas in England I was taking care of some personal stuff. So there's a lot of meditation time, and I found that I was paying close attention to my brain a lot. And I was doing this slightly before as well, before I left, because I found the violin was so stimulating for me. I felt like every time I meditated with a violin next to me or someone playing the violin, my brain is just activating. That's why they say Mozart and all sorts of wonderful strings, just like connecting and activating my brain. I was paying attention to like all the neurons firing off, to quieten down the mind and the body so much that you can actually feel and hear. To actually hear your brain activity is a phenomenal experience. And unlocking memories and trusting that those memories aren't fallacies, they're actually true memories, is an absolute process you can go in. But to get there and to start doing those things, one needs to practice the process of detachment first, because the last thing you want to do is regress into the memory. You want to be able to consciously carry the wisdom and the presence and the knowledge of who you are today with you through the memory and observe it.
And I feel like this is a safer approach in the sense, because when regression happens, there's a lot of, there could be leading, and they could be traumatized even more. Like there's a lot of risk. There's a lot of risk with that. Interesting.
And you could get stuck in regression, and that's now you're going into the realms of not amnesia. What's the word? Oh, it's on the tip of my like dementia. Those type of thing. What's the other one? I can't think of the word. It's right on the tip of my tongue. Anyway, the likeness of dementia. And you're going and you're regressing to all these states, and you get stuck there, and then you jump to different times. You're constantly regressing because there's no intelligence you've not learned to carry and hold on to the wisdom. And I think that's why, I reckon meditation and music and the right setting and setting could really transform a person's life. And honestly, because my brain and the way I operate and the way I navigate in the world, people are drawn to me quite often because you're just different in the world. You navigate the way you think and feel. And I'm just like, I ain't doing anything special. I was like, I'm just seeing it. I'm just seeing it for what it is. I'm not thinking about it too much because there's nothing to think about out here. You're hungry, you eat. You're tired, you sleep. You're thirsty, you drink. You apply that to every aspect of your life, you've got an easy life. You can move it forward. A lot of the things that cause us stress, anxiety, depression don't even exist in the present moment. To me, that's ignorant. And it sounds harsh. It does sound harsh, but I promise you, when you meditate,
but it's reality though. It is basic, and it's really hard. A lot of people do hold on to a lot of things. I carry a lot of stress, and there's a lot of times, that if I could get there quicker and do all that, but I don't meditate. I don't do any of those things. I've always been told I should.
But your understanding of meditation is also like, this is why I'm so passionate about it, because not most of the time I'm really educating people on meditation and less teaching them, because to inspire one to meditate, you've really got to present it in a one that, like, right now meditation is presented as this boring thing that you sit in stillness and silence your mind. If that's what I was doing, I wouldn't be doing it. What's the point in that? That's the state that comes after the clarity, the stillness, the feeling of like just knowing and bliss. That's the post meditative state. That's your reward for doing all the processing.
Is there ever a time where meditation would have negative effects? Like, would it be ever bad for mental health?
Yeah, incomplete meditations. If you're meditating and you're on the cusp of finding the truth, like it's just within reach, you can come back so conflicted because you're like, damn, I was so close. And now you're living your life anxious because you're like, right, there's this thing, and you're not paying attention to people in your life because your mind is so focused on that one tiny little thing that you were so close to reaching but couldn't quite get to. That can be a conflict. You can enter, okay, let's just say you started opening up portals of your brain and areas of memory that were repressed, that were very traumatic, and this is why we always teach the value of carrying your wisdom with you so that you're not so harmed in that state. I mean, it's very, very, very rare that you can harm yourself in meditation into a difficult harm state. It's just basically think of it like the best way to put it is, there's meditating, and each meditation will feel like a soulless experience, like its own little kind of special experience contained within itself. It's not like a journey. It'll just be one meditation, and then this meditation, and then this meditation, and then eventually you get to a state of being whereby, okay, now I'm deepening my states of meditation, whereby you can't meditate for 82 hours, so you can only meditate for like 4 or 5 hours that day, and you only have that time available to your meditation. So you get this way to your journey, then you stop, live your life, do what you got to do, and then you go back into meditation and pick up where you left off. Now imagine you having to stop your meditation when you're about to embark on something crazy or some epiphany or something new, something different. But you can't, your body literally cannot sit in meditation any longer. This is what I'm saying. Like, it's rare that harmful state can happen, but you are so powerful within your brain and your mind by that point that it won't be that much of a detrimental effect. If anything, you'll just be detached and dissociated from your experience of life, and you neglect to eat because it's like you're so obsessed with trying to get to this state again. It's less.
What it reminds me of is me in a good sleep and somebody woke me up.
There you go. Exactly.
I'm equally irritated. But that is a meditative state, if you will. The easiest, I guess, the easiest for me, anyways. I can do that all day long if I wanted to. All right, so we got about 20 minutes left. So let's talk about your book. Let's talk. Okay. I mean, we talked about your knowledge and your where this is all coming from, what you're trying to do. How does all that relate to the book? What does the book have that you haven't shared? In a sense, where can they find it? Let's talk about your book.
So the book, it's called Meditate, Breathe into Meditation and Awaken Your Potential. Here's the little copy of it here. And look, it's not that big of a read, I promise you. There's a lot of meditation books that are like talking about this is a very simple, straightforward read, but it's packed full of how to. So what I teach is it's in 4 sections. So the first section is like the introduction to meditation. And what I do, I mean, there's my meditation journey, which is like a preface, but you can skip that and go straight to the introduction if you want to get started. And the introduction talks about what meditation is and gives you a better understanding of what meditation is beyond mindfulness, beyond kind of what the traditional understanding of meditation is, understanding that you are a creator studying creation, essentially, in meditation. And a little bit about the history and kind of presenting it in a way that's like, oh yeah, that makes a lot of common sense. Like, that's like, if I was gonna, like, I talk about the ancient rishis and like how they were trying to study creation, but how does one study creation without tearing the world into pieces to look for the creator inside? Because you ultimately land on that same kind of thing, right? What's the source of this creation? Anyway, so there's a lot of these little blacked out sections. So this is a guided meditation script, and there's like these little exercises blocked out as well to help you integrate the knowledge. So when you've read something and you're like, okay, I didn't quite understand that. I was trying to be very conscious that I was teaching a class full of very different people when writing this. So there's like little exercises and tips that can help you understand knowledge, like understanding breathing as a tool of detachment, understanding the different realms of awareness. Like I do this exercise with the hand, and I teach it in a step-by-step where you look at the hand in life and then you close your eyes and recall the memory of the hand. And then you do something with that memory, like move the hand side to side in your mind, then open your eyes and move your hand side to side like that. Mm-hmm. So it's just teaching you how consciousness can move through 3 different realms of awareness within about 5 seconds. It went from life, memory to future perspective and brought it back out into life. And teaching like these little elements in small little ways. So the most part, I move on from what is meditation and introduction to meditation. The second section is basically all the how-to meditate. The 5-step process, teaching you how to detach. So it goes breathe, position, lock, meditate, integrate. So breathe and the importance of your breath, kind of what we spent some time talking about today. Positioning and getting into the right meditation position. Not every position is the same. You position yourself in a way that allows you to breathe fully and completely. Locking. So this is the component that most meditation teachers and meditation in the West tends to forget. The activating the meditative state, which is the rolling of the eyes towards, for the lack of a better term, towards the third eye. Don't strain yourself when doing this. This is important because when you strain yourself, you lock intelligence to the tension. It's just a subtle movement. And it's almost like you're inducting a semi-trance-like state. You see people in trance-like state, their eyes are gone. So you're kind of consciously doing that a little bit. And then meditating and kind of what that means and the things you can do in meditation. And then the most important part, integrating. So once you've reached a state of awareness, maybe you've accessed a memory that allowed you to process something. Maybe you realized an idea that you need to bring into life. How do you settle that into the body? You don't just get up and go from a meditation, just like you don't just get up out of bed and run, You mindfully wake up, you stretch your body. So there's steps, that you have to take. So that's kind of like the first section, or the second section, once you got a little bit of background in meditation. And then section 3, which I wanted to include, this was a section that took a lot of time to write, which is deepening your meditation. So this is now learning how to take that to the next level and access those higher states. I included a little bit from my meditation journal in there, just kind of like a personal experience that I had, and it seemed very poetic at the time, so I hope it resonates with people. So the chapters are like moving, so this section, the chapters are like moving out of reality, moving out of the mind, and then moving into transcendence. And then one thing that we haven't discussed about, and which probably people are going to surprise about, is the fourth section, integrative development. And this is where I tend to start a lot of people off meditating if sitting in contemplation just seems too boring or too much. And integrative development is all about, have you heard of chakras?
Yep.
So chakras, people see them as energy centers. The way I describe them is knowledge centers. And I describe them in a pre and a post-enlightenment state. In a pre-enlightenment state, your chakras are physical places on your body. For example, if I talk about the first chakra, the root chakra, we're talking about this energetic center at the base of the spine. Fuck that. No, it's basically before enlightenment, the root chakra is basically your anus. And the way you turn your root chakra into an equilibrium, the way you harness the intelligence of the root chakra is look at what's coming out of it. If it's not healthy, fix it and you'll fix your chakra, and then you'll be able to. And what I do is I create like a little personal development journey through the chakras in a very logical, rational, sensible approach that will enable you to move your life forward in a happy and healthy manner, that help you be more present and be more human in a very intelligent way. Because a lot of talk about chakras, everyone wants to talk about the colors and the beautiful, energetic, post-enlightened states of chakras. If you can't detach from your mental health issue, good luck trying to get to those states into the chakras. So I thought, where can I start people where you can learn how to meditate, pay attention to the body, and learn how to meditate by paying attention to your body and recovering from the problems that your body has and your problems you have in life through intelligent processes and bringing your body to states of equilibrium and into solutions. So we started the root chakra, and on top of that, at the start of every chakra, I teach a step to a very, very intricate, very precise tantric meditation, which is all about, and if I talk to you about Tantra, that's like this beautiful way where you can And I talk about the analogy of like you're drawing in energy from your root. You've got this beautiful pot of soil, of energy at your gut, and you're working to fill that up, grow a plant, grow a lotus on your head, open it up, and have this orgasmic experience at the end of it with a rush of chemicals rushing down your body. So even though it's small, I packed in a lot of how to do it so that you're really focused on action. Like, okay, I can talk philosophy for hours and hours and hours, and I can tell you my beautiful notions about life and creation and all of that. But ultimately, what's the point if you can't experience it for yourself? And my aim was, you've got this book, you've got so many different ways on teaching you how to meditate within it. It's a how-to guide. You read it from start to finish, you will realize like, whoa, there's a lot I can do already. If you can eat, sleep, drink, and any of those things, you can meditate. If you can breathe, you can meditate. It's supposed to be a book that meditation shouldn't be something that's difficult to do. And everything I've read and understood about meditation was so overcomplicated, so mistranslated, so just messy and all over the place and ignorant. Enter mindfulness, And so I'm like, what can I offer someone where it's not too new age to a point where I'm just bringing in these words that make me sound intelligent, like, yeah, let's talk about chakras, let's talk about consciousness and bliss and all of that. No, let's just go straight to how to get this job done so that you can get on with your life, live it. Because remember, before teaching meditation, I was life coaching for years. So I was learning about the human experience in a whole different way, like from people who are living fulfilled lives. Because if you had the resources to hire me as a life coach, you did pretty well in life. But why aren't you experiencing the fulfillment? So you can imagine the philosophical conversations we were engaging in. So I understood very well what the human experience needed, because I was learning from the people who were at the epitome of what the human experience is displayed at. So I'm listening to these wonderfully privileged individuals. I don't know, why the hell aren't you happy? I'm having a better experience of life, and I have a fraction of what you have. How is this possible? And then you start understanding it's because you never took the time to listen to your intelligence and really integrate into your body and life. And the problem is we're born into a world now where the moment you're born, for most of us now in the world, we get food, water, shelter, everything's covered. So you're not learning from those root levels. Our ancestors had to try something, and if it wasn't right, they realized, like, this isn't right. Look at what's coming out. Like, this hurts, this is painful. Instead, we go to the doctor, take a pill, instead of not eating that thing again, what I mean? Or drinking that thing again. Our ancestors never had that privilege, but they had it because of that lack of privilege. They had the intelligence to move their life in a healthier and positive direction, to be able to uncover these intelligent processes that I spent my life studying, basically, just because I wanted to.
So where can they find your book? I put the website meditatethebook.com in the chat. Yeah. Is there anywhere else?
On Amazon. So there's a link straight on that. As soon as you go to the homepage, you can click the link. It'll take you there. It's available worldwide on Amazon. You can get it on Audible as well. So you can get on the audio. But I'm not the one narrating it, but Nick did an amazing job. He was the guy I hired. And then it's also available in digital format too, as an ebook. So you can get it on Amazon. It's completely widely available there. And I think at some point I'm going to start selling through TikTok as well, and creating a wonderful little shipping stuff system here at some point. I don't know how. So it's more than the books. But I've got another book coming out shortly as well.
What's it called?
Kind of like a prerequisite to this, called Meditation Kit.
Okay.
So helping people get the kit together. It's kind of like my introduction to me teaching neurodivergent individuals how to meditate. Okay. Like, for example, I had this one client who was struggling with their hands. They couldn't keep their hands still. So I ordered a whole bunch of fidget spinners and stuff and things to keep the hands occupied during meditation, so that they weren't so self-conscious of the hands, because I was consciously telling them to play with this thing. There you go. So you can use that in your meditation, use malas and stuff for that. Weighted blankets, like how to put, how to basically understand. It's a beginner's guide to items in your safe space, and making sure that you're not just sitting with a crystal ball because it's aesthetically pleasing, so that you know each use of each item and what it can do, and just kind of, again, to motivate people to meditate. And
I like how you are tailoring each experience with each individual based on what is best for them, so they have the best, and that makes it easier for you to be successful with the teaching, because you're working with them. You're not trying to get them to follow a indoctrinated standard. So I value that. That is good.
This is
Thank
why
you for
we all
doing
have
that.
different shaped noses, different colored eyes, different colored skin, different cut size lips and bodies, and different shape. The body you're in is no accident. It's no accident at all. You need this body to thrive. It's designed perfectly. Even individuals with disabilities, we talk about this and what you're learning, what you're able to discover. And this is where we go into past lives and the journey and the biological journey and the evolutionary journey. So if we all have unique bodies, then we all have unique ways in which we need to meditate so that we can access the intelligence within.
Is there a way to find your teachings though? So this is your book, but do you have a
book
way
is the main part right now. So I'm getting more and more busier with my coaching again because I'm teaching. My teachings come through coaching, and I'm building a platform. So I've got an online program called. It's just a quick online course, and I teach the basics. I'm trying to figure a way to deliver these teachings in a format that can be read. So I want to do a third book, which is a little bit more in depth. But I'm creating programs where I'm talking and speaking, live events, doing all of that stuff. It's all in process. I'm one person creating this. And I'm very conscious of not hiring. I don't want it to become like this big conglomerate of a team, because that's where coaching was going. And I don't like that idea. I'd rather just work with schools and positions that are already in place, come in and teach teachers. This is kind of what I'm trying to do, is like, I'm kind of trying to create a platform where teachers are coming to me so I can teach them the knowledge. Community leaders, come, I can teach you some stuff, take it back and enlighten your community. Because if I start creating a conglomerate around my identity, it starts tipping over into people wanting me and not the lessons that I'm delivering. Like it's a very thin line. I'm being very careful to navigate it. So my next steps and what I deliver, it's not about Talwinder, Sidhu. It's not about. I love dancing. I want to be in the clubs and be able to dance happily and freely. I want to be able to be in the world freely, and I enjoy that. And I think if I start tipping over into the balance of being this teacher and being this leader and delivering these lessons in a profound and massive way, it'll tip the balance of my life over, and it'll tip my ego into a place.
There's nothing wrong with having it available for those who might need it. Right.
And that's what's taken the time, is trying to figure out how to deliver it without being, because I've done it before and it starts becoming, no, we want Terry, we revere Terry. And I'm like, no, I want to be able to.
Because we have several teachers in our ranks too. And we're working on what's called Interstellar, the Academy of Ufology and Paranormal Studies. And the whole concept with that is to have, because I would be teaching people how to investigate, how to think for themselves and solve these things, so you can come to these conclusions in this world, And then we have Serena Dracis who talks, with paranormal and Reiki, and she teaches, and helps with things like that as well. And we got Dave Petrella who's an astrologer. So we have a bunch of different types of teachers and things like that too. So we might actually have something that could help you with, but we'll have a conversation with that later on. But Cece's connected with you, so I'm sure you guys can have a chat afterwards. But I'm really liking it. I'm really vibing, man. I'm happy to meet you. This is good. I'm learning.
Good.
I'm being a little personal, because that's what I like to learn this stuff. Great guest, Cece. Good job. She's the one who that found you.
Yeah, she's a great supporter. She really encouraged me in TikTok. Like, there's comments from Cece and individuals on TikTok who really, because I initially used to think that the stuff I was saying, like, because as a kid I would talk like this and I would get so much ridicule for it.
So I was just going to say that, let's leave it on the TikTok kind of comment, because I get people telling me that I got to be on TikTok and I can't figure out how to make it work. Just like meditating, I can't figure out how to meditate. But how TikTok, someone like me could make TikTok work?
Why I say, the weird thing is, this is what is very crazy, is like, I understand human behavior, I understand the metaphysical world and consciousness very well. But because I studied marketing, it just adds this weird dynamic to how I understand algorithms and how things operate. So with TikTok, the best thing to do is just keep on talking, keep on creating content. And what will happen is look at the data, look at the numbers, because Something that helped me in the early stages, I read something on TikTok or something popped up that said, you know, if you imagine every viewer of your video as an audience member in a conference room, and it's like, and you're only getting like, say 50 people or 100 people, 150 and 200 people, 300 people watching your video. Imagine that in a physical space. Right. I was like, there's 150 people that want to listen to my psychobabble. Brilliant. And then I'm like, oh, but if I talk about this topic, more people come. So I'm like, I'll create more content around this topic. And so you're learning who your market is and what message they want from you and what they need from you that you're able to deliver. And that's how I found my neurodivergent kind of following and moving forward in that direction, because that was the one thing I was so scared to share, funny enough, because I just thought I wasn't ready to do that. I wasn't confident enough. But it turns out I was. I just thought no one wanted to hear it because I was in a very neurotypical world. There you go.
I have lots to talk about. Maybe that's it. Maybe that'll be the platform we use to stir the shit up. Maybe we'll use that for the controversy. I don't know.
TikTok's accepting ads now, so it's going to become like, didn't have Facebook was in the early days, where it was amazing to get following and build groups, and you can get hundreds and hundreds of people really quickly. That window is closing, it seems, for TikTok because of now it's commercializing quite rapidly. However, there is a shortage of content creators, so there is a great opportunity still. So go forth and prosper.
Oh, I'll share you with my page, and you can look how horrible it is and suggest some things. We'll go from there.
Well, just keep using it.
I don't know. I got too many things to do. But anyways, how do you want to end this? If you could send a message to our audience that's listening and those on the replay, and anything you want to leave them with, you got 2 minutes. What do you want to say?
All right, 2 minutes. Whenever you're in doubt, it doesn't matter what the source of the craziness is. No matter however high you go, however low you go, just remember to return back to breath, because nothing can exist after it. Don't forget the importance of your breath. If you can breathe, you can handle whatever is coming at you. And if whatever's coming at you is a little too much, just hold your breath for a couple of seconds. Just take a little moment, take a little pause, capture your breath, take it for yourself. But if you can breathe, you can meditate. If you can breathe, you can survive. If you're breathing, you are living, and you're doing it right. So breathe well and breathe consciously. Learn how to breathe in a way that resonates with you. And if you want to prompt, just remember, try breathing in a way that you can sustain for the rest of your life. If you could only breathe one way for the rest of your life, you found that breath. You found your breath. You found your controlled breath, your controlled state of being. Return to that, and you'll survive anything.
That's beautiful. I got a segment that was going to do after this, but I'm going to not do it because I don't want to ruin it. That was nice. That was great. Thank you so much for being here. So for those of you that are listening, what we're going to do is we're going to play the outro, and we're going to do our new segment called the After Chat. And Cece is going to tell me how she enjoyed the show, and we're going to have a conversation and talk to our listeners. So stick around. And thank you, Terry, so much for this. Please be in touch. Keep talking to Cece, and then maybe there's other things that we can do. We'll be seeing each other again soon.
Awesome, and thank you, Ryan, for the time, and thank you, Cece, for recommending me. It's been a wonderful time.
Yeah, I appreciate what you're doing. Keep doing that. Thank you. All right. That's it, everybody. That is a wrap. That is the end of it all. Thank you for joining me tonight. I look forward to seeing you back next week, where we'll continue to have this conversation deep down into the rabbit hole in which we call the Ultra Spectrum. Thanks for joining us. I said that already. Oh well, fuck it. Eat the world.